Ah yes, the curved sword, the cutie curvy of the Souls series. Always known for being lightweight, and it even predicted Souls PvP years ahead of their times. One unique property of these weapons in the first game is that it replaces a kick with this backflip attack. As you can imagine, this does damage, so I felt like this was necessary since I haven't seen anyone else do it yet. This brings up the question of, can you beat Dark Souls 1 by backflipping? Alright, I'll go over the rules very quickly. I can only use the kick attack from curved swords. That's pretty much it actually. Other than all bosses, no summons, yada yada, whatever. Let's begin. I picked the Wanderer class as it starts with our first weapon of the run, the Scimitar. Not the greatest, but I actually get to fight the Asylum Demon at the start of the run, so that's nice. Not too bad of damage and... oh. Yeah, we need to discuss something pivotal to the run. For all of you coming from Elden Ring, there is no dedicated kicking button. You have to hit a combination of R1 and up on the stick at the same time for it to register as a kick, or a backflip. When you have a control scheme like this, let's just say that consistency is pretty much thrown out the door. It doesn't matter how much you've played, you will never be able to string together an infinite amount of kicks together. There is always a good chance your inputs won't register the way you want, and you will do a basic attack instead. Now look, I researched online and tried to find some solution to this, like a mod or an autoscript, but it seemed like the people who had tried to bind kick to one key had mixed results. So I will be implementing a rule for myself to give me some leeway and not have me banging my head against a wall and making this unfun. I will be giving myself 5 free hits on every boss to cushion my mistakes. However, if I exceed this total, I will restart the fight. Don't worry, I won't be using these freebies intentionally if I can help it, and if I perform an R1 attack and it misses, it doesn't count. That's pretty much it, and if you feel I'm being too lenient, welcome to my challenge runs, where the rules are made up and nothing really matters. Getting out of the asylum, I take to the Valley of Drake's route to get to Andre, and after getting wrecked by this guy, I upgraded my DSim to +3, and I take on the gargoyles. This fight requires a knowledge of their moveset and the patience to take them down. That sounds familiar. But seriously, I found the best time to get in attacks was after any aerial attack and during phase 2. I just waited till one was breathing fire and punishing the other. I think I got away with only one freebie here. Another thing to mention is that the backflip you do has an insane amount of poise. I believe you still take counter damage if you're hit, but you can usually heal right after. Figured this would be the best time to bring that up. It could be useful later in the game. I almost died when I got double tapped by the last one's fire, but I turned it around and won the fight. After ringing the bell, I make sure to kick Lautrec off the ledge this time. Well, that's fitting. Making my way to Blighttown, I light the bonfire and we make our way to the next weapon we will be using, the falchion. Overall, it's just a slightly bigger and heavier scimitar. At the same upgrade level, it has an advantage of 2 whole points of damage more. I'll take what I can get though, and after getting it to +5, I face Quelaag. Because of her place in the game and the weakness of my weapon, this takes a while. Your best bet is punishing after she spews lava. I try to stay near the side because her fire butt spray whatever would probably one-shot me. She is really bulky, but after 10 minutes I get the final hit, and would you look at that, her soul. We'll be needing that for later. We ring the second bell and head up to Sin's Fortress, but first, I decided to go to the asylum to get the Dull and Rusted Iron Ring. No way am I fighting Stray right now. It would take forever. Moving on, when arriving at Sin's, I remembered I needed the large ember, and that just opened up its own can of worms. Thinking it would be interesting to change up the order of things, I decided to break into the depths via this neat little trick. However, this led to me getting stuck out of bounds repeatedly, including forever sliding down this slide and making friends with the Butcher Lady in another plane of reality. Truly disgusting they didn't let me break open their game properly. After getting the Ember, I made my way up to Sin's, buy some large Titanite shards, upgrade the Falchion to +10, and I wanted to stock up on some Demon Titanite. So I went to ground level, and I just want to rant for a second here. Say what you will about any enemy in this game, but these guys are so damn janky. I hate them so much, and this was infuriating. I only killed the first 2 down here. I also killed the one in the parish. And then there was the Iron Golem. No skips or tricks this time, just as boring as you could imagine. The main strategy here was staying close so he would keep doing his leg stomps or fist slams. I was actually surprised that not only could I stagger him, but I could actually bring him down. I used all 5 of my freebies, and man, I'll tell you, it is really nerve-wracking being so close to being done and knowing a missed input could be the difference between victory and another 15 minutes. Arriving in Anor Londo, I make sure to pick up this Demon Titanite in this chest, and when arriving in the main castle, I meet up with some friends and I get their Demon Titanite. Also, I picked up Dwayne's set. Now I can tell you the plan I've had if you didn't already see this coming. All of the troubles I went with, and the order I took, was specifically so I could get the next weapon in our arsenal, Quelaag's Fury Sword. This fiery curved sword is quite good, and we can upgrade it to +4 and then begin our fight with Pikachu and Snorlax. This fight went quite well. The weapon does good damage, and we look damn good while dealing it. I wish this fight was more interesting. On second thought, never mind. Both are rather weak to fire, and after changing the rules to 1v1, I have no issues backflipping my way to victory. I don't think I used many freebies in this fight, so that's always nice. Obtaining the Lord Vessel, I figured it was a good time to try to start the DLC up, so have your time it is. Can I just say how mildly infuriating it is when you're near them and they want to spit water at you? Anyways, I freed Dusk, and then after getting the pendant, I figured I made it this far, why not a little longer? The initial plan was getting Seath out of the way, but little did I know that was the worst mistake I could have made. I figured I'd go to prison this time, but the critical mistake was not preparing for Curse. Yep, that sucks. So we're gonna have to fix that immediately since I don't want my vitality to be too high. Thankfully, I can get the key with this attack. After I get the key, I do the shake with the snake and breaking out. Yeah, we need to get this fixed immediately. Seath will have to wait for now, and I make my way back to the Burg to take on the Taurus demon. With the weapon I have, you can imagine it wasn't that difficult. The hardest part was this cheating knight who didn't like the cut of my jib, and I was kinda lazy at this point, so I didn't even bother getting the key for the area, so I just jumped into the lower area and made my way to the lovely lady merchant. I cured my curse and figure now is as good a time as any to take on the Capra. I actually retried this fight a couple of times, not because I died, but because I kept using a freebie, and I wanted to do this fight flawless since the damage is so high. This move is actually good for crowd control occasionally. Who would have thought? Finishing up this area, I move on to the depths and take on the Gaping Dragon. As we've all learned, he's easy, like me. Aim for the head and he'll take more damage, and I almost killed him with a freebie, but the Channeler had my back. Thanks. Next up, the DLC. Sanctuary Guardian is up first, and I get owned attempt 1 because I was being a bit cocky and got what I deserved. Second attempt started not great, but I was able to turn it around in a drawn-out battle. As you can imagine, he has a lot of attack windows perfect for us, including any that leaves his tail down, so no worries about being poisoned. The only thing I had to worry about was my positioning during this attack, but other than that, I took him down with ease. Alright, next up, Artorias. This was rough. He has massive resistances to fire, and Quelaag's Fury Sword doesn't have the best physical damage stat. It also didn't help that I was playing sloppy. Another problem is I had no realistic way to stop him from buffing, so combine massive damage and sloppy play and you get... yeah, that. The first attempt ended because I used 6 freebies, and that's such a devastating feeling that I figured I should do something else for now. That something else was the Moonlight Butterfly. At this point I do great damage and it only takes 2 cycles. One thing to note here is that the backflip move is so bad for spamming since it moves you away from the target. Just thought I'd point that out. Later on I try to turn my back a bit to enemies so I can hit them with a backswing and be ready for another attack. Either way, I figure it's time to pay Seath back. Look, cursing is unbecoming of proper people, so it's time for this bad to meet his end. Only thing notable about this fight was this clam who snuck in and got obliterated by Seath's crystal explosion. Thanks, I guess. With that, we have the first Lord Soul. I then realized I should probably go and fight Sif now and definitely not forget to put it in the script this time. Also, I wanted to get the ninja flip ring, but when talking to Alvina, I accidentally said no, and if you want to join the Covenant, you'd have to go get Absolution, and no way am I doing that, so let's move on to the boss. I'd like to say it was easy, and for the most part it was, but damn if I didn't almost get owned by Sif, but I survived because I'm just built different, I guess. Anyways, I smack her one last time and I send her straight to No, she's going to heaven. Making my way to the catacombs, it's time for Pinwheel. Honestly, I don't really know what to talk about during sections like this. Like, do you really want me to explain for the nth time that Pinwheel was easy? Is that really interesting? You know what I like? Leftovers. You know, like food you keep in the fridge. I'm a bit of a connoisseur of cold food, and I gotta say, good mac and cheese leftover is so good. Not as good warm or hot, obviously, but I'd rate it a solid 9 out of 10. Would eat at 3 a.m. straight out of the Tupperware. Sorry about that, got a little heated there. So let's move on to the new Londo ruins. I figured it'd be a nice change of pace to tackle them earlier than normal to introduce some variety to these runs. I actually stopped my first attempt because I started with freebies and I didn't want to have them used so early. So next attempt, and I have the Havel strategy and it's going quite well. Although please tell me how I can pull off these acrobatic moves and at the same time fat roll. Anyways, this was quite the manageable fight. I was keeping it 1v1 for the most part, then the kings were behaving. But I actually used all 5 freebies in this fight. Near the end, I actually started employing that strategy I talked about earlier so that if I accidentally did an R1, it would miss. And it paid off because I actually did avoid using a 6th freebie this way. 4 kings down, and I'm feeling great about this run. Next up, the Painted World. Would love to see this area in a future game or something. You know the deal, open the shortcut, do some parkour, and fight Priscilla. I disable her invisibility rather quickly, and the fight is rather boring. The most challenging part was trying to come up with some sort of innuendo, but couldn't come up with anything, so I didn't want to force it. Yeah, I'm not touching that one. Wait, I didn't mean... Either way, we finish up here, and that was the end of the first recording session. Between recording, I did some prep work so that there was less footage to comb through for this video. Just a quick aside for anyone thinking about making videos like this, the longest part, by far for me, is scrubbing through the footage to see what I want to use for each part of the script. A good tip for recording is to know generally what you want to do so you can cut down on the gameplay you capture. Another technique is doing prep work that you only mention since it's quicker to talk about it rather than find the footage and edit it. Anyways, that's what I did here, because I needed to rework my strategy for Artorias. The problem wasn't that I was dying, it was that I was burning through my freebies too quickly. If I could get through this health bar quicker, the margin for error would be wider. I did my research and found that Artorias was actually quite resistant to fire, more so than lightning. My decision here was to go get a falchion and send it to lightning. Quelaag's Fury Sword has quite poor physical damage. In my head, I thought the falchion would do more damage. I needed a falchion, so I got the enchanted one from the Duke's Archives and made it lightning, and yeah, it does less damage, so that was all a waste of time. So, I figured the best and easiest way would be to get the red Tearstone ring. This doubles my damage at the price of dying in one hit to every attack he has. Attempt 1 was going well until he hit me with the / leaping attack, but attempt 2 was much better as I find that the sliding slash and the sliding stab are the best windows to punish. I'm not sure why, but I felt really cool when he'd used the sludge attack because the flip itself carried me away from it. I still can't stagger him out of his buff, but it doesn't really matter considering the circumstances. I take him down quite easily, and I think I only used about 3 of my freebies. Not bad. Now we can finally see why I was trying to push Artorias so early, and that is because we are obtaining our next weapon for the run. We just need to give Chiron the soul of Artorias and she will give us the Gold Tracer, a beautiful weapon that inflicts massive bleed buildup. This was important as I wanted to tackle the Demon Ruins next and several of their bosses are immune. We start with my nickname from high school, and yeah, the immunity here wouldn't have really mattered all that much. Moving on to the Spicy Stray Demon, I use the Gold Tracer because it can cause bleed pretty quickly, and this boss is a tank, so I wanted to quickly get through it. And again, the whole immunity thing wouldn't have mattered because this boss is not immune to fire. In fact, he's quite weak to it. But whatever. Finally, we can see my plan in action as we take on the Centipede Demon, and it definitely pays off because the Gold Tracer does nice damage, and I found that playing Ring Around the Rosie is the best strategy even when he leaps into the air. I died in my first attempt because this attack somehow double tapped me, but next attempt was the usual shenanigans. And Bed of Chaos time. I'm blessed today as I was able to pull the usual strats possible without being swept to death. Also, the Chaos Bug is immune to fire. Kinda odd, but it doesn't really matter when you could punch it with your hand if you wanted. Either way, another one done. Next up, Nito. And I'm not sure why, but this gave me the most trouble of the 4 lords. The first priority was getting rid of the skeletons, which is why I prepared with a divine weapon. I decided to upgrade the scimitar because I was feeling nostalgic, but yeah, this ain't no DSim. Partially my own fault, but killing these skeletons was kinda rough. They stagger me quickly from performing my attacks, and Nito was feeling quite aggressive. Eventually, I accidentally lured the big boys and got grabbed by the super rare attack from Nito. I quit out to reset the fight, and I actually learned something new. If you manage to kill the Skellies with a divine weapon and quit out, they will stay dead when you attempt it again. Once I got rid of his minions, it's mostly just sticking to his front because attacking from behind usually leads to missing. No surprises here. Now for the cleanup before the end game. As I go back to the asylum and take on Stray, and it's the same as before, and the Gold Tracer does quick work. However, I thought it was humorous when these hollows jumped down and proceeded to get absolutely wrecked. Anyways, I needed to go to the catacombs again and pick up the Dark Moon Seance Ring to unlock Gwendolyn's boss fight, as I had no way to hit Guinevere in her huge tracts of land. Yeah, this boss fight was the usual running you'd expect at this point, but I did take him up on the acupuncture he performed and paid in full for it. I finally decided it was time to face the end of the game, and I made Gwen way harder on myself than need be. I used the Black Knight armor to give myself some variety from the usual Havels, and I died a couple of times. This wasn't hard, I was just playing poorly, and Gwen got in my head a bit when he stopped swinging for no reason, which usually puts me in a poor spot. After a couple of tries and some unintended red tearstone ring, we can finally say we beat the game with mostly this weird backflip attack. Here are the final stats, by the way. But come on, we all know this isn't it, because that would be lame and you can clearly see there is still time left in this video. I made a save state before Gwen and we head off to the DLC to fight Manus. Yeah, this was a bit anticlimactic for me as he was much easier than I anticipated. Here you can see the difference between the Fury Sword and the Tracer. Like, yeah, it's that big of a difference. I played poor first attempt, but second attempt I found myself pretty comfortable with his moveset, and I kinda realized for as aggressive as a boss he is, his cooldown between many attacks are quite long. I didn't stick with Tearstone strats, but the damage was more than sufficient as I noticed he was really into doing the Wombo combo. But that ain't Falco, so I was able to take him down with around 3 freebies. One left. Man, I kinda wanted this to be a bit more epic, but Calamite was easy. Not really sure what else to say here. The Gold Tracer does great damage, and while I almost died, I found that as per usual, his fire attacks were the best opportunity for punishment. I wanted to change the order of things so I could provide some meaningful change and shake things up a bit, but oh well, I can't be too upset at not smashing my head against a wall. I think I used a couple of freebies, but I don't remember stressing about going over the limit here. So can you beat Dark Souls 1 with only backflipping? I mean, yes, you can technically, but practically it would be a nightmare, so I'm happy enough with this run either way. This challenge was pretty fun, if not a bit frustrating due to the nature of the control scheme for this attack. It took me around 5.5 hours total to complete the run, and I never felt too overwhelmed. Would I recommend you try this? If you can get an autoscript to work with high consistency, go for it. Otherwise, this challenge is really up on how you'd like to approach it. Anyways, please subscribe and like if you'd like to see more content from me, and comment on how I did. I'm Mr. Metagross. Have a nice day.